desperately ill child sets out for a medical treatment. A Coast Guard officer keeps watch overnight. An Iraqi becomes an American. Meet them all in a single day in the life of refugees. Hello, I am Simbanyi Shekoya and this is Our Voices. In today's show, we'll hear the voices of refugees from the African continent and follow their journey to their new homes. You'll watch two parts of VOA's documentary, A Day in the Life of Refugees. This documentary was shot by more than 75 news teams in 32 countries. Voice of America mobilized its full network of journalists to chronicle how forced migration affects the rich and the poor, newcomers and their hosts, those in flight and those out to stop them.
Today is World Refugee Day. It is a day to honor you, the people among us who have been forced to flee.
The statement taped earlier for distribution today gets some news agency coverage, but it's crowded out by other things making news this day.
Just who gets the top jobs in Europe?
Syria. 2 ambulance workers and 14 civilians die in government airstrikes. Georgia. Riot police are called after a visiting Russian sits in the head of Parliament's chair. 240 are hurt. Venezuela. Fired oil workers mass outside the Venezuelan vice president's office to demand back pay. Chile. Rocks are thrown as teachers take to the streets. They're demanding better pay, more funding, and improvement of working conditions.
Are there any senators in the
United States. Congressional hearings continue over threats to impeach the U.S. president.
Do you think it's appropriate to use DOD assets to paint a border wall?
Washington. Legislators question military and border patrol officials about whether or not to use private contractors or government soldiers to paint the wall on the southern border of the U.S. Washington. The U.S. President and Canada's Prime Minister hold a joint news conference.
We're very concerned about the escalation by Iran recently.
Refugee issues do not come up.
And many news outlets this day carry the story of a couple traveling by bicycle from France to Vietnam, raising money for charity. They cross borders freely. They have the connections to do so. It's Tina Teen's 18th birthday today. She lives with her family in a settlement for internally displaced persons. She and her family fled here in 2008 when Russian troops occupied their home village. It is less than 40 kilometers away, but just a memory.
და ყველაზე მეტად რაც მახსოვს ეს არის პამიდრის სუნი. აი არასდროს არ დამავიწყდება და მაგის შემდეგ ეთქით აი სუნი არ მიგზნია პამიდრის რო წყვიტავდით და აი სპეციფიური სუნი რო აქვს თვითონ აი ეგეთი სუნი მაგის შემდეგ აი აღარსად ანუ არ შემხვედრია ეგეთი პამიდორი. პირველ წლებთან განსხვავებით ეხლა როგორც ვარ წარუმატებაში არის ძალიან შეცვლილი. იმიტომ რომ მეგობრები მყავს, დავდივარ სკოლაში. უფრო და უფრო დავახლოვდით წლების მერე ბავშვები.
Back at home, her grandmother watches the news. 11 years later, tensions between Georgia and Russia are still high. At a refugee camp in Africa, the cry of twin girls. They were born today. 2 more refugees on World Refugee Day. She fled after a failed coup. She now lives with neighbors. But with the babies, there's not enough space. She must move outside. She doesn't know how she will afford her twin babies. One of her biggest wishes for her and the girls? Soap. No refugee mother has it easy, and it's tougher if you are alone. This young mother serves others with the help of her daughter. She fled here from Ethiopia. She hopes that one day she'll be able to return. She was widowed in war. She fled across the border. The UNHCR taught her how to make charcoal. Selling it has given her a new life.
J'ai commencé le travail là, j'ai oublié tout ce que j'ai vu à RCA. J'ai tout oublié ça. Je suis très fière, je suis très contente.
She misses her home, but having a business has taken her mind off the camp and separation. Back in Jordan, the walk through the craft fair has ended for the UNHCR head. Next, a quick handshake with Amman's mayor. Then, a regional conference on refugee issues.
Prevention means eliminating the causes that force them to flee in the first place. Why don't you look at the root causes and the prevention and try to address that? The flows will go down more quickly than trying to build obstacles to people that, frankly, many of whom are in danger of their lives.
Next, on to a visit with UNHCR workers. With 16,000 people on the UNHCR staff, opportunities to brief the boss are scarce. There's a lot to cover, and his day is not over. On the way to today's World Refugee celebration at the world's largest refugee camp, Mohammed Kalam drives by the registered camp. It was first settled in the late 1970s by Rohingya refugees who were driven from Burma. Nearly 50 years later, a new, larger wave of Rohingya fleeing repression are under his care. He's joined for the ceremony by the U.S. ambassador to Bangladesh.
Now we have built a bridge there, supported by TICA, Turkish International Cooperation Agency. Now the works are ongoing to link the bridge for a motorized access.
But underlying tensions surface, and a refugee march turns into a protest. They chant, "No more refugee life." The protesters are quickly moved along, and Kalam is on to his next stop. I'm ready. 13,500 kilometers away, a refugee from China makes a short drive to take his daughter to school. She practices the song she will be singing in class this day. This song has extra poignance. It's titled, "God Bless America." After dropping her off, he has work to do on behalf of those he has left behind. More than 3,100 kilometers to the west, Border Patrol Officer George Gomez watches the border wall.
This is where we were seeing the majority of the entries coming in, where the smugglers were directing them to come in through, right in between this orange cinder block building and this white wall, this other cinder block wall.
Many migrants don't wait for papers.
You got anybody else down there?
His job is to stop them.
If you come in somewhere where it's not designated as a port of entry, you come in illegally, I have no discretion but to detain you, take you to the station, process you, what have you.
But on World Refugee Day, he gets a pleasant surprise.
This is something new that we had never seen before. The Mexican government have the National Guard actually out here on foot patrol, visible, I guess in an attempt to deter people from actually crossing in here in this sector.
A Mexican church has opened its doors to migrants. It's where Haitians waiting to get into the U.S. camp out and wait. Nothing special here marks World Refugee Day, but a sign on the front door indicates that there is a new policy today. It says, owing to the bad conduct of single Haitians, starting June 20th, only families are allowed. Yemis, 15 years old, wears a Haitian flag as a headscarf. She's been here for more than a month. She's waiting for her number to be called to have an interview with U.S. Immigration.
Estamos esperando el número. Que primero te dan el número, ahí tú vas a tener que esperar que llegue el número que está en el papelito. Y si llegan 3 meses y el número no ha llegado, todavía va a quedar aquí. Mi número es 3360.
There's no word yet. There's lots of time and little to do. Later, she will be babysitting. Meanwhile, she has dreams to share. At the same moment in the U.S., music breaks the morning still. On the porch outside his apartment, Jay Abdo plays mournful music to remind him of home. His life here is very different from his life in Syria. Both better and worse than before.
We have this, also the meeting with the casting director. You know, I have a meeting with the casting director.
He's just become a citizen after years as a refugee. His wife is still a refugee.
We do what we can.
Yeah, at least we can.
In Syria, he was a popular actor.
You will be great at audition.
He could have remained one even as the country fell apart if he followed the regime. He couldn't.
In 2011, when the uprising reached out to Syria, the regime asked me to support the military approach on TV, which I refused to do. And some of those who refused ended up in detention centers. And I was scared to death.
He fled, thinking he'd be back in a couple of months. That was 8 years ago.
You can play all range of roles, right?
Being a refugee actor in the United States is different from being a celebrity in the Middle East. He had to make changes.
We'll see.
In Syria, he had his pick of roles. Here, he must start over with auditions by videophone.
Roles are limited. This is a challenge for us. Just so you know, nobody can be so safe here.
His given name, Jihad, became Jay, an Americanized name without political baggage.
I'm good. Thank you so much for taking the call.
He gets a call from an organizer of a refugee event to be held in a few months in Washington, D.C.
I'm so honored. I can't believe I'm originally from Morocco, so I have watched some of Jay's series, so I told all my family.
He has an audition for a paying job later today, but first, he'll go to an unlikely place.
If you have inspiring stories you'd like to share, please join us on social media. We are on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and our handle is @VOA Our Voices. We are also on WhatsApp. Our number is on the screen. We'll take a short break now, and coming up, more on a day of the life of refugees. We'll be right back.
We're bringing women's voices to the conversation, and more than that, we're building a community of inclusion and empowerment.
Here in Kinshasa, campaigns to raise awareness against the spread of coronavirus are common, but getting that information to people who have no access to water, electricity, or money can be a challenge.
We are here at Kalerwe Market in Uganda, Kampala, where in this whole market, women are crying out for their situations to change.
For women, it will be better for us.
I think a big thing for me is just being able to say that when these protests are happening, does it turn around into policy?
Our kids are raped every single day.
This movement got the government to listen. It really was powerful because it showed what is possible when men and women band together and say enough is enough.
It's not necessary anymore to climb on a car. I can be in any place to cheer with the people.
Welcome back. You are watching Our Voices. 75 news teams, 32 countries, one day in the life of refugees. To commemorate the World Refugee Day this year, Our Voices team brings you images from the recently released documentary on refugee stories around the world.
He takes to Facebook on World Refugee Day, then heads to an event with Italy's police academy. Italy's Deputy Prime Minister and Interior Minister, Matteo Salvini, has built his career and a substantial following by trying to close Italian ports to refugee ships and making it easier to deport refugees and migrants. Salvini says immigration without limits will bankrupt his country. On World Refugee Day, however, his focus is lowering taxes to grow Italy's economy.
Opere pubbliche e taglio delle tasse. Altre ricette non ce ne sono.
Meeting with government ministers, he talks about making life better for Italians. Like populist leaders in other countries, his initiatives resonate with citizens who believe that politicians are too quick to share scarce resources with newcomers that they would say have no right to be here. In Calais, we made it back from the jungle in time for the migrants' press conference.
As I am from Sudan, I have been witness a lot.
They complain about their treatment by French police, who they say unfairly harassed them.
There was unfair fights.
The event is put on by the migrants themselves. No other news cameras are there. As the sun sets, many in the camp are still outside. But inside his makeshift home, Omar perks up at the sound of a new toy. His parents are quiet. The thought of life-saving surgery is one of the many uncertainties ahead for these refugees. Another uncertainty is their status. Even if Omar's condition is cured, with Myanmar still discriminating against Rohingya, he is likely to remain a refugee here.
We are in a bit of a rush because a little one here, we couldn't find him. I think he was just having fun with his friends, and we're trying to catch right now the 6 o'clock bus.
It is unclear if Juan Antonio realizes what it is taking to get him to the bus on time, or even if he's grateful. Learning English is something he'll do later. Back in Colombia, it is night. The Venezuela refugees move to the plaza, where they compete with rival dance groups from Colombia for serious money from tourists. This night, not a lot of money. But he says that's not the only reason he does it.
Pero también no es solo por dinero, sino por pasión, porque te gusta, ¿entiendes?
There are always competitors, and this is something you do only when you are young and healthy. If injured, what does the future hold for a refugee? At nighttime in California, Jay auditions for a job as a narrator.
It's just beginning again at the international dateline and around the world at the dawn of a new day.
For the test, he uses lines he performed in a play a year earlier. It quotes the English playwright William Shakespeare, who lived 400 years ago. Jay uses lines written back then that he says are appropriate on World Refugee Day.
You'll put down strangers, kill them, cut their throats, possess their houses. Whither would you go?
Mounds on a parched hillside. This refugee camp, Kakuma, is one of the world's oldest, in continuous operation since 1992. This is its cemetery. Babies born here are likely to die here. On World Refugee Day, there are no visitors and no signs of who these refugees were or what they had hoped to become. Juan has made it to the bus station just in time. Back at Casa Alitas, a migrant from Guatemala takes his place.
Allá no tengo quien me ayude, no tengo, mi mamá falleció, el papá de la niña nos abandonó, pues allá no está nada bien, allá trabaja uno, porque trataron de secuestrarme a la niña y pues no quiero que me la quiten, es única que tengo.
I see very brave people. I see people who are showing us an example of how you should live. That if you know that there's something you can do to protect your family better, that you will do it.
Significa algo muy especial. Mi hija es único motivo para seguir viviendo y pues no quiero que le pase nada malo.
For most refugees, migrants, and displaced people, their lives today were much like yesterday and will likely be the same tomorrow. What also will continue, the belief of the people we met that they can successfully make it to safety no matter what the odds.
I still remember leaving the border through the Congo River. It was just a day that not only, as I got older, I realized that it actually kind of traumatized me. It was like the best and most traumatizing day of my life at the same time. Because had that day not happened and things not worked out, there's no telling, how life could have rolled out for me.
Entonces ese es mi propósito, digo, si ya Dios me tiene hasta acá, pues cumplir mis sueños y ayudar a salir adelante con mi familia.
They understand what you have to do to sacrifice everything for your family, or to come ahead to this country and try to be able to put some money together and send it back to the people who remain.
It's difficult always to be uprooted. And you go to a different country, it doesn't matter if it's heaven or not, but it's not your country.
No, I don't want to go through again this refugee life.
Lo que quiero es tratar de proteger a mi hija y pues yo pienso que acá vamos a estar mejor.
At the end of this World Refugee Day, there are happy endings for some. Fadia and Montasser, husband and wife from Iraq, are minutes away from being sworn in as U.S. citizens in a ceremony in Portland, Oregon. But first, the presiding official must wrestle with proper pronunciation.
That's right. Yes.
She rolls her eyes. Here in the northwest part of the United States, there aren't a lot of people from there. The ceremony starts with the American national anthem. For them and the others, the words are still a little unfamiliar.
If you'll please raise your right hands.
But I love my country. It's Iraq, and I love my country. Second country is America.
So help me God. Congratulations, you're now a U.S. citizen.
I know it's not easy to leave my family. It's not. It's a big change. It's new people, new country. It's new life, new food, big change. But I'm happy for my kids to give them a good future.
Ultimately, World Refugee Day is ceremonial. It is one of many days on official calendars put out by organizations devoted to issues that, all too often, are in the shadows. Today, it recognized 70 million men, women, and children who have fled their homes in search of another, some out of fear and some in search of something better. But at the stroke of midnight, World Refugee Day ends. And refugees return to the shadows once more.
Whoa, whoa.
For the complete version of this documentary, please visit our website at www.voanews.com. That's all for our show this week. We salute the humanitarian workers who are fighting for the safe return of those being displaced and people who stay positive in the face of adversities. Until next time, goodbye.